this was the worst idea ever. Hey guys, welcome back to AP Wargaming and Terrain. It's Tuesday and we're still working on our board. So we finally finished the tile portion of this. Super excited about that because it really was the worst idea ever. It took forever to cut these out. It took forever to lay them on the board. And I was just so ecstatic when it was finally done. I believe it probably ended up being around 6 hours or more of just those tiles, just the tiles. The cutting, the placing, texturing, everything was absolutely absurd. However, the board looks fantastic, so it was worth it, but I'll never do it again. So without further ado, let's get this board finished.
Alright guys, so last week we left off at about the same spot. We were just laying tiles. I did do a staggered step with all of these tiles. Now, laying these tiles, all I really used was just PVA glue, a household brush. I went through about 2 bottles of PVA glue doing this, and that is like the child size Elmer glue bottles. So not too expensive, you know, a couple of dollars to do this. Really wasn't a big issue. Elmer's glue does hold really well in this situation. Now, when we finally got to the end of the board here, and I drew myself a line. You don't necessarily need to, I just needed to remind myself where I was going with this. But all I really did was take some of the actual tiles that I had left over and just kind of staggered them about, making sure to leave big spaces to make it look like this edge of the city is just kind of like falling into ruin, into actual nature. Now, this was probably one part of those tiles that I wish I could change. I probably could have done better on this, but by the end of this, I was just so done with these tiles that I just kind of rushed through it. I did do one thing at the very end, and that was I took some of those tiles that were left over and just kind of chopped them up and then placed them all over on the edge of the board just to give a little bit more of a broken floor tile look. I didn't really have a plan when it came to laying them. I just kind of put them where I thought they looked good and just kind of moved on from it. Like I said, I was really done with this. Now, while all of the glue for that is drying is when I decided that we were gonna put in some dead grass. So I just grabbed some wax paper, an old house brush, plugged my hot glue gun in, and started sticking brush bristles into some hot glue piles and just let them cool out. It's really the best way to do these if you're not willing to spend any money on it. Now, after all the glue dried on the board, I went back and I took all of the edges off that we let run wild. I did keep my thumb on these tiles while I was cutting them, and I do recommend doing that, otherwise you just pop them right off the board. Now, at the end of the tiles and randomly placed throughout the board, I started to put in some cracks. I know, I hate the lightning bolt look, but it really did make this piece look a lot better. Just not so perfect tiles across the entire board. I stuck mainly towards the edge where it went off into the wilderness by the hill. Now, when it came to painting, I didn't want a huge blob of this gray, so I did half the board in a solid gray with no water, and then the other half of the board I watered down the paint quite a bit. Now, this gave me a really patchy look, which I wasn't sure how it was going to work out in the end, but fortunately this worked out really well. If you have a large area, I would definitely recommend doing this, especially on something with floor tiles, because it's actually gonna give you a lot more tones and textures to the paint rather than just being one big solid color. Now, once all the gray was done and it was almost completely dry, I went back over the whole entire board with a lighter gray. I use a rainy day gray from Anita's acrylic paints, and I just heavy dry brushed the entire board. Now, once that light gray was put on there, I took a vanilla cream color and lightly dry brushed the entire board, just trying to hit the high spots. Now, once everything was dry, I took it outside into the shop and I sprayed it down with my black wash. I did end up having to do this about twice, and that was because some parts of it just didn't want to take the black wash. So just to get an even tone, I did it twice. And then once all that was dry, I took it back inside and I redid the vanilla cream dry brushing. And then immediately after that, I didn't even clean the brush out. I took a white and just barely hit any of the edges. And our last step here was to add our little grass tufts. Now, those spacings in the board, they were accidents, but they were good accidents. I enjoy that they're there. So that's where I decided I was going to place most of the grass tufts, was inside that spacing on the board. And also right here is where we're going to do our water feature. So I wanted to make sure that some of those grass tufts were around that, because it's water, that's where grass would be growing. Now, if you guys use crappy household brushes like I do, it's a good idea to go back through and pick off all the little bristles, because those brushes lose a lot of them. So when I was done, I went back over it with some tweezers, and I found every single one of those tiny little bristles, yanked them off the board before they became a major issue.
Alright guys, so that's all the time I had this week. Unfortunately, those tiles took a really long time, so we're gonna have to do a part 3 on this particular series of videos. Next week we are going to start doing the detail work, and that's going to be our snow flocking, our dirt, and our gravel and stuff like that. I'm also going to finish up the edge of the board as well, basically just painting it black, but hey, this is a tutorial, right? I didn't want this series of videos, or this particular series, to run super long like our part 2 of our ruined building. If you're feeling brave, I'll leave a link up here and you can give that a shot. So I do have a few things planned for the finishing touches on this board. I know for one that I am going to add a small water feature to it, and then 2 is we're probably going to put some snow flocking all around the board, just kind of scattered about, just to make it all a cohesive piece with my particular terrain that I've made over the last couple of months. So anyways guys, short video on this. Like I said, this is part 2 of 3 parts for this board. So I hope you guys have stuck around for this. I've really enjoyed this build. I hope you guys are enjoying it as well. Other than the tiles, I'm really liking this. I like the way it looks. I think it's going to be great for the games. This is the main piece that's holding me back from actually doing battle reports on this channel. So once this is finished, fingers crossed guys, we'll have some battle reports to be watched here on this channel. So as always, if you've enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe. It definitely helps me out and keeps me going forward through all of this stuff. So that's it, guys. We'll see you this time next week.